Teaching is like communication, except unlike communication, it's for the giving of information for the long term, except for the short term, or unlike the short term. So communication is that exchange of information for the short term, but teaching is that giving of the information for the purpose of having it for the long term. Hopefully your whole life. Learning is like listening, except unlike listening, it is listening for the absorption of the information for the purpose of storing long-term wise, hopefully the rest of your life. Um, Listening is more for that present moment, what's going on in the present, and learning is for that knowledge that needs to last. I definitely think that teaching and learning can take place at the same time, and they often do. So, as like a teacher teaching a class, you are learning what methods are best for the students to absorb what you're teaching them. Um, you observe, and through trial and error, you eventually learn ways and methods of teaching that are more effective than others. Um, I think also that learning and teaching take place at the same time, in that if you ask a student to teach another student something they've recently learned, that usually solidifies that information into their mind a lot more easily than just going over it, doing some worksheets. It's another form of revisitation um, that allows them to really absorb that information, because they have to give it to somebody. That exchange keeps that information fresh, more easily accessible when they need to retrieve that information later on. The purpose of teaching is to, give information and knowledge for the long term. Um, and the purpose of learning is to take in that information and knowledge for the long term. The purpose of teaching and learning all together in and of itself, I think, is actually the preservation of knowledge. So when you think about the preservation of knowledge, we usually think along the lines of like storing a PowerPoint on a thumb drive, or writing things down in books, or making a web page and a directory and all this sort of stuff, or physically accessing information. But I think that when you teach and you learn, that moment is the preservation of that information in people. You can preserve that information in writing and technology as much as you'd like, but it's very important that that knowledge is preserved within people's minds. That way they can use it. I mean, that is the purpose of knowledge, is to be used. So the purpose of teaching and learning is the preservation of knowledge we as a people have acquired over thousands of years to use in the present moment, in the future, in writing. Effective teaching looks like a classroom of students that are confident that their teacher will teach them what they need to learn. They are ready to do as the teacher asks, even if they don't want to, but they are confident that the teacher is going to teach them something that they will know after they have been taught it. Effective learning looks like knowing. Um, they have learned a lesson, and they can recall it, and they understand it fully. An effective teaching and learning, to describe it further, I think it looks like a classroom that is working efficiently, has movement of ideas that flow freely, and has an air of a passion for learning in it. Not just by the students, but by the teacher too. The teacher exhibits both the passion of teaching and learning at the same time, and the students exhibit that passion of learning. And when you have those elements in a classroom, I think that that is what effective teaching and learning looks like. What makes a good teacher? Um, well, I mean, we can think about our bad teachers, or we can think about our favorite teachers. But I have a feeling that our favorite teachers were someone's bad teacher, and that I think a good teacher is a teacher who has learned to teach um, through adaptability. They have learned to be adaptable, how to be flexible, how to change their methods if it's needed. Um, they they really want to listen to their students. They actually want to be there, even if the job is stressful. I think a good teacher is a teacher that is happy to teach, um, and enjoys teaching. Experiences I've had that have shaped my understanding of teaching and learning. So, I'll go back to those favorite teachers and bad teachers, but I won't go too deep into mine. And the experiences I have had with teaching has been more recent, and as opposed to learning when I was a young child. But teaching, I find a lot of joy in. And, at first when I started tutoring, I didn't think that I could do it. I thought that I would get too frustrated too easily. I'd become discouraged. It would be too overwhelming. And that's not to say it wasn't too overwhelming at times. But what I learned was that teaching is so fulfilling that it's worth it. Like, there's not a lot of negative things that could happen in a school that would deter me from wanting to teach. Um, Maybe there are plenty of things that could happen at a school that would deter me from wanting to teach at that school, but teaching in and of itself is so rewarding, satisfying, that I feel I'm like drawn to it now that I've actually tried teaching through the act of tutoring. Um, and learning has been something that's always second nature to me, um, as is for most kids, I think. Even though I'm an adult now, I learned to create that passion for learning as a young girl, and I think that it's very important to continue that passion throughout your life, because likewise, how teaching is fulfilling, I've always found learning to be very fulfilling. The acquiring of knowledge, being able to see the world through different perspectives upon acquiring knowledge, just opening the mind up to all the possibilities that exist, or at least, opening the mind up to what you have access to learn. Um, because there's so much that there's so much that no one person can learn everything, of course, but you know, just the act of going out of your way to learn something is fulfilling. Similarly, as is going out of your way to teach. see myself as a teacher. I kind of always have. When I was very young, I decided I wanted to go into teaching. A lot of my family members on my father's side are teachers. Um, and then starting out tutoring, I definitely see myself as a teacher. I enjoy it so very much. Um, but also, I was the biggest sister in the family, so I had to watch my little sister. I had to take care of her, and a lot of that involved teaching her things. And so I guess you could say I was primed from a young age to be talented at teaching to some degree. Um, I'll not say that I'm a perfect teacher and I'm just naturally perfect. No, I think that practice and experience makes one perfect. But I think that how I've started life and my life path has guided me towards being a teacher.